Imagine being a 10-year-old girl with a rare cancer, fighting not only for your life but for your dream. In an upscale neighborhood where people turn their backs, she faces rejection after rejection, armed only with her art and a hope that feels out of reach. But what happens next will change everything. One stranger sees her talent, and her world is about to turn upside down. This is a story of determination, resilience, and the power of kindness. Don't miss how one little girl's dream is about to become the hope she's been searching for. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Emma Mallory was a 10-year-old girl with a dream. In a small, quiet town nestled among green hills, Emma's world was filled with the simple joy of drawing. Her tiny bedroom, with walls adorned by colorful sketches, was where she spent most of her time, escaping into a world of art. It was a peaceful haven, a place where her imagination could soar without limits. But as much as Emma loved to draw, there was something in her life that made her dreams feel more fragile than the paper she worked on. For the past year, Emma had been battling a rare form of bone cancer. The pain was constant, sometimes sharper than others, but it was always there. Yet Emma never let it show. She had learned how to hide her pain, how to smile even when her body felt like it was betraying her. Most people didn't understand, and that was okay. As long as her mother, Sarah, never saw her suffering, Emma could handle it. After all, Sarah was doing everything she could to keep them afloat. She worked 2 jobs, one as a receptionist at a local dental office, and the other as a cashier at the grocery store, just to pay the bills and cover Emma's treatment costs. But, despite all of Sarah's hard work, it was never enough. The bills kept piling up, and the treatments Emma needed were expensive, often costing more than Sarah could make in a whole month. Emma's condition wasn't improving, and time was slipping away faster than they could manage. Her mother had told her about an experimental treatment that could save her life, but it came with a hefty price tag, $150,000. Emma could see the worry in her mother's eyes, the quiet desperation in her voice when she tried to hide her tears. But Emma wasn't one to give up. She couldn't just sit back and wait for a miracle to happen. She had to do something. One morning after Emma had finished her breakfast, she made a decision. She would sell her drawings. She knew it wouldn't be easy. She knew that most people in town would probably ignore her or laugh at her, but she didn't care. She had a gift, a talent that she believed in, and maybe, just maybe, she could help her mother. She spent the next few hours preparing. She opened her small wooden box of professional-grade colored pencils, a birthday gift from Sarah, and ran her fingers lovingly over the smooth cedar wood. These weren't ordinary pencils. These were high-quality tools that allowed her to create artwork like no other. Each pencil was perfectly sharpened, each color representing a different piece of her soul. She set her mind on creating something beautiful that could make a difference. Her first drawing was of a bird, a cardinal she had seen perched outside her window that morning. The bird had stayed there for nearly 10 minutes, as if it was posing, just for her. Its bright red feathers seemed to glow against the backdrop of the bare tree branch it perched on. Emma captured the bird's proud stance, the glint in its eye, and the delicate curve of its wings. She knew it was her best work yet. She wasn't sure how much it would sell for, but she hoped it would be enough. By noon, Emma was ready. She put on her best outfit, a pale yellow sundress she had found at the local thrift store. It had a small stain near the hem, but she had cleverly covered it with an iron-on butterfly patch. Her mother had made the dress look like new, and Emma felt proud to wear it. She tied her blue bandana around her head to hide the thinning hair caused by chemotherapy. Even though she didn't feel like herself anymore, she refused to let the disease define who she was. She was still Emma Mallory, the girl with a dream. As Emma made her way to the heart of the town, she clutched her portfolio, a battered sketchbook filled with her artwork, and her box of colored pencils. She had a plan. She would go door to door asking the people in the upscale Maplewood Heights neighborhood if they would like to buy one of her drawings. She knew that the people in that area had money. Maybe, just maybe, they would appreciate her art and help her reach the goal she so desperately needed. The walk to Maplewood Heights was long, and her knee ached with every step. The cancer had spread to her bones and the pain in her leg was often unbearable, but Emma refused to let it stop her. She was doing this for her mother, for herself, and for the chance of a better future. She couldn't afford to let the pain control her anymore. When she reached the gate of Maplewood Heights, she hesitated for a moment. The neighborhood was beautiful. Grand houses with well-manicured lawns, high fences, and security guards at every corner. It was everything Emma's world wasn't, but it was also the place where the help she needed could be found. She took a deep breath and walked up to the security booth, where a man named Mr. Harris sat looking bored and uninterested. "Excuse me, sir," Emma said with a voice much stronger than her small frame suggested. "I'm selling drawings for a fundraiser. Could I go door to door?" Mr. Harris didn't look up at first, but then he glanced at Emma and frowned. "We don't allow solicitors in this neighborhood," he said. "It's against the rules." Emma's heart sank. She had expected this, but it didn't make the rejection sting any less. "It's for an educational fundraiser," she added quickly, hoping to find a loophole in the rules. "Educational fundraiser?" Mr. Harris repeated, raising an eyebrow. "You need permission for that. You didn't get approval." Emma had rehearsed this line over and over in her head, but now that she was here, it felt impossible to get the words out. She could feel the pressure building in her chest. She wasn't going to give up, though. She had to find a way. "Please, sir," she said, opening her sketchbook and showing him the detailed drawing of the cardinal. "I'm really good, and I'm only asking for $10 a drawing. That's all." For the first time, Mr. Harris looked at the artwork, really looked at it. His eyes widened slightly as he took in the fine details, the care Emma had put into every stroke of the pencil. "You drew this?" he asked, surprised. "Yes, sir," Emma said, nodding eagerly. "I have more." Mr. Harris hesitated, looking around. "Fine. But if anyone complains, you'll have to leave, understand?" Emma's face lit up with a bright smile. "Thank you, sir. I promise I won't be a bother." And with that, she walked through the gate, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. This was her chance. This was her dream, and she wasn't going to let anything stop her from chasing it. Emma's footsteps echoed as she walked past the ornate gates of Maplewood Heights, her sketchbook clutched tightly to her chest. The wide, tree-lined streets of the neighborhood were a stark contrast to the small, cramped apartment she called home. The houses here were enormous, manicured lawns stretched for what seemed like miles, and grand porches adorned with elegant chairs and winding ivy overlooked the immaculate landscapes. To anyone who looked from the outside, it seemed like a place where everything was perfect, untouched by the troubles of the world. Emma had never been in a neighborhood like this before. Her world had always been small, confined to the apartment building where the sound of the trains rushing by at night was the soundtrack to her dreams. Here, in Maplewood Heights, the world was quiet and controlled, each house a fortress of wealth and exclusivity. But to Emma, it felt like the perfect place to try and make a change, to do something that might help her mother, and maybe, just maybe, save her own life. Her knees trembled, not just from the pain that shot through her left leg, but from the fear of rejection that always followed her whenever she put herself out there. She had spent the last few hours gathering courage, practicing what she would say, imagining a smile from someone, anyone, who might take a chance on her work. As she passed the first grand house, Emma's heart beat faster. She had to do this. She had no other choice. The first doorbell she rang was met with silence. She stood there for a long moment, her hand still pressed against the cold brass, her mind racing. After a few minutes, she rang it again. Still no answer. A sinking feeling took hold of her, but she forced herself to move on, checking off the house in her mind and heading to the next one. She couldn't afford to waste time. The next house was just as grand, with a sweeping driveway and a fountain in the center. The stone pillars were carved with intricate details, and the windows gleamed in the sunlight. Emma paused before ringing the doorbell, adjusting her faded yellow dress and pulling her bandana tighter around her head. She felt like an imposter here, like she didn't belong, but she couldn't let that stop her. When the door opened, a tall woman with dark sunglasses stood on the threshold, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against the doorframe. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone sharp and dismissive. "Hi," Emma said softly, feeling her courage falter for a moment. "I'm selling original artwork. Would you like to see some of my drawings?" The woman raised an eyebrow but didn't make a move to step forward. "Artwork," she repeated, as if the word itself were foreign. "We don't buy things at the door, sweetheart. Not from children, anyway." Emma's face burned with embarrassment and she took a step back. "I understand," she mumbled, her voice barely above a whisper. She had expected rejection. She had prepared herself for it, but the sting still hurt. As she turned to walk away, she heard the woman's voice again. "Try the farmer's market or the flea market, kid. That's where your kind of stuff belongs." The words were a dismissal, a command that echoed in Emma's ears as she continued down the street. She wasn't sure how much time had passed or how many doors she had knocked on, but soon the weight of the day began to sink in. With each closed door, her hope dimmed a little more. Her knee throbbed with every step, and the cold reality that no one wanted her artwork, that no one cared, settled in her chest like a heavy stone. She passed another house, and another, her heart growing heavier with each unreturned knock. The people who opened their doors didn't seem to care about her or her art. They were all too busy, too involved in their own lives, too wrapped up in their perfect, comfortable world. Every door she knocked on only reinforced the idea that she didn't belong. She was just a little girl from a poor family asking for help in a world that had no space for her. After a while, Emma found herself sitting on a stone bench in front of a large modern house with floor-to-ceiling windows. She took a deep breath, her chest aching with the effort. She opened her sketchbook and began flipping through the pages, tracing her fingers over the drawings she had poured her heart into. There was the cardinal, so vivid it seemed to almost come alive on the page, its wings frozen mid-flight. There was the park scene, capturing the peaceful serenity of the old oak tree by the pond. Each piece was a reflection of her soul, a piece of her that she had shared with the world in hopes that someone would see it. Someone would understand. But it seemed that no one did. The world, in all its grandness, had turned its back on her. She rubbed her eyes, trying to stave off the tears that threatened to spill. Emma had always been strong, stronger than most adults, she liked to think. But in that moment, the weight of the world felt unbearable. She wanted to give up. She wanted to go home, crawl into bed, and pretend that everything was okay. But she couldn't. Not now. Not when she was so close. Her phone buzzed in her pocket and she pulled it out, expecting a text from her mom. But it wasn't from her mother. It was a message from her best friend, Ellie. "How's the selling going?" the text asked. Emma stared at the screen for a long moment before typing back, "Not good. No one wants to buy anything." She paused before adding, "But I'm not giving up." She didn't send the text immediately. Instead, she set the phone down and took a deep breath. There was still time. She couldn't stop now. There had to be someone out there who would see her talent, who would see her for who she really was. More than just a sick little girl with a sketchbook, but someone with a dream that could make a difference. She stood up, her knee burning with pain, but she ignored it. She had come this far, and she wouldn't stop until she had tried every door in this neighborhood. It didn't matter if they didn't see her now. She had a dream, and that was all that mattered. The sun had begun its descent, casting a warm, golden light across the sprawling neighborhood of Maplewood Heights. Emma walked down the perfectly paved streets, her legs growing heavier with each step. Her knee, which had been hurting all day, now felt like it was on fire. But she pushed through the pain. She couldn't stop now. Not when her mother's tired face haunted her every thought. Not when the pile of medical bills at home seemed to grow taller every week. Despite the rejection, despite the silent dismissals and cold stares, Emma refused to give up. She clutched her sketchbook tightly, determined to make a sale. Each house she approached felt like a small mountain, and with every step, she hoped that just one person would appreciate her work. As she reached the end of the street, she saw another house. A modest one compared to the others, with a white picket fence and a garden full of roses in full bloom. It looked like the perfect place to try again. The warmth of the sun and the soft chirping of birds around her made it feel like a sign. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Taking a deep breath, Emma walked up the stone path leading to the front door. She rang the bell and waited. Her heart was racing, her palms clammy, but she held her head high. She had to believe in herself. This was her dream. This was her chance. The door opened slowly, revealing an older woman with silver hair neatly pinned into a bun. She wore a soft cardigan over a light blue blouse and a pair of glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. Her eyes twinkled behind the lenses as she looked down at Emma. "Can I help you, dear?" the woman asked, her voice kind though slightly wary. "Hi, I'm Emma," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves. "I'm selling original artwork to raise money for a medical treatment. Would you like to see some of my drawings?" The woman's eyes softened at Emma's words. "Oh dear. What kind of medical treatment?" Emma hesitated. She wasn't used to talking about her illness with strangers. "It's for cancer," she said quietly, hoping the woman wouldn't judge her. "I'm trying to raise money for a treatment that could help me." The woman's expression shifted and she stepped back, motioning for Emma to come inside. "Come in, sweetie, let me see your drawings." Emma walked inside, feeling a little lighter with the warmth of the woman's welcome. The house smelled like fresh flowers, and the living room was cozy with soft cushions on the couch and a large bookshelf filled with books. It felt like home, unlike the cold, impersonal houses she had visited before. She opened her sketchbook and began showing the woman her work. The cardinal perched on a branch, the park with the old oak tree, and the portrait of her mother, looking tired but full of love. The woman took each drawing carefully, studying them with a thoughtful look on her face. She nodded appreciatively at each one. "You have a real gift, Emma," she said after a moment, her voice soft. "These are beautiful, especially for someone your age." Emma's heart swelled with pride, but there was still a knot in her stomach. "Would you like to buy one?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm selling them for $10 each." The woman hesitated, her gaze drifting to the kitchen table where a pile of bills lay, untouched. Emma could almost hear the woman's thoughts. $10 wasn't much, but it was still something, a small amount that might help. "I'd love to buy one, but—" the woman began, then stopped, looking at Emma with sympathy. "I'm afraid I don't have cash right now, sweetheart. But I will tell you what. If you leave me your contact information, I'll make sure to share it with a few friends who might be interested." Emma felt a wave of disappointment wash over her, but she forced a smile. "Okay, that's fine," she said softly. She grabbed a pen from her bag and quickly wrote down her mother's phone number and their address on a small piece of paper. "Thank you," she said, holding out the paper. "I really appreciate it." The woman took the paper, giving Emma a gentle smile. "You're welcome, dear. I'll spread the word. You just keep doing your beautiful art, okay?" Emma nodded, feeling a small sense of accomplishment. It wasn't a sale, but it was something. As she turned to leave, the woman called after her. "Be careful, sweetie. Not everyone in this neighborhood will appreciate what you're doing." Emma glanced back, her eyes meeting the woman's for a moment. She nodded, even though she wasn't sure she understood the warning. She knew the people in this neighborhood didn't see her. They didn't see the pain in her leg or the weight of the medical bills. They didn't know that she was trying to save her life. To them, she was just a child with a dream, knocking on doors to sell her art. As she walked down the path and out the gate, Emma felt the weight of her mission settle back into her chest. She had come so close to a sale, yet she had failed once again. She had heard the whispers in the back of her mind, the ones telling her she wasn't enough, that no one would care about her or her art. But then she remembered her mother's words. "Keep going, Emma. Keep believing in yourself and you'll find a way." Emma swallowed the lump in her throat and walked on, determined to continue, despite the pain, despite the rejection. The next house might be different. The next person might see her for who she truly was, a young artist with a heart full of hope, doing everything she could to fight for her life. She couldn't give up. Not now. Not when she was so close. The day was far from over, and Emma was not done yet. By the time the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange, Emma's feet ached, and the weight of the day began to press down on her. The evening air was cool against her skin, but the exhaustion in her bones felt like an unshakable weight. She had knocked on dozens of doors, had been met with cold dismissals, lukewarm offers of future commissions that never materialized, and polite refusals that still stung. The pain in her knee was becoming unbearable, and the hope that had carried her through the day was starting to fade. But Emma kept moving forward, determined to reach at least one person who would understand, one person who would see her for who she truly was. She walked past the towering mansions, her heart sinking lower with each empty doorstep. The beautiful houses, with their meticulously manicured lawns, seemed like a world away from her own life. No one here understood what it meant to struggle, to fight just to survive, let alone to create something beautiful out of it all. The last house on her route stood before her, its grand architecture casting a shadow over the street. It looked imposing, with its iron gates and ornate stone pillars. The garden was neat, with flowers blooming in rows like soldiers standing at attention. The air around the house seemed still, as though everything here was perfect, untouched by the real world. Emma hesitated for a moment before making her way up the stone path, her heart racing in her chest. This house looked like it had everything: money, beauty, security. But it would take more than that to impress her. She rang the doorbell, and after a few moments the door creaked open. A man stood before her, tall, middle-aged, wearing a polo shirt with the local country club's logo embroidered on the chest. He had a warm smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice polite but guarded. Emma took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she held her sketchbook to her chest. "Hi, my name is Emma. I'm selling original artwork to raise money for a medical treatment. Would you like to see my drawings?" The man's smile faltered, slightly, but he nodded. "Sure, let's see what you have." As Emma opened her sketchbook, the man glanced down at the pages. His eyes flicked over the drawings: a cardinal perched on a branch, a serene landscape, a portrait of her mother. And for a moment, he didn't say anything. Emma held her breath, waiting for his response. "These are impressive," he finally said, his voice softer now. "You have real talent. How much are you selling them for?" Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had never expected this. "They're $10 each, sir," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The man studied her for a moment, his gaze lingering on the drawings. Emma could feel the weight of the silence between them, unsure of how he would respond. Then, to her surprise, the man stepped back and motioned for her to come inside. "Come in," he said, his tone now warm and genuine. "Let me take a better look." Emma hesitated, but then stepped through the door. As she entered the house, she felt a strange mix of nervousness and hope. The interior was just as grand as the exterior. High ceilings, polished floors, and art on every wall. It was like stepping into a gallery. The man led her to a small study at the back of the house, where a desk was piled with paperwork and books. He gestured for her to sit in one of the chairs across from him. "Do you mind if I ask what kind of treatment you're raising money for?" he asked gently, his eyes scanning her drawings. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She hadn't told many people about her condition, but something about this man's kind eyes made her feel safe enough to speak. "It's for cancer," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have a rare form of bone cancer. The doctor said there's a treatment that could help me, but it costs a lot of money, more than we can afford. My mom is working 2 jobs and we still can't make enough to cover it, so I'm trying to raise money with my artwork." The man listened intently, his expression softening. He didn't look away or make her feel like a burden. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "I'm going to buy these drawings," he said, his voice firm. "And I'm going to help you, Emma. This is not just about art anymore. You're a child who deserves a chance, and I'm going to make sure you get it." Emma blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaky. The man smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes this time. "I'm going to take your artwork to my art collector friends, and I'm going to make sure they see it. I'll make sure it gets the attention it deserves. This isn't just about the $10. This is about your talent and your story and the difference you're making. You deserve to be seen, Emma." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she tried to hold them back. She had never expected anyone to care this much. She had never expected anyone to see her as more than just a little girl trying to make some extra money. But here was this stranger, a man she had just met, willing to help her in ways she had never imagined. He continued, "I'll make sure people know about your work. You deserve to have your art shared with the world, and I will help raise the money you need for your treatment. You're not alone, Emma." Overwhelmed, Emma managed to find her voice. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. The man smiled and stood up. "It's my pleasure. I'll get started right away. And don't worry, we're going to make sure your mother doesn't have to worry anymore." As Emma walked out of the house later that evening, her heart was full in a way it had never been before. She had walked into Maplewood Heights unsure of herself, unsure of what she could accomplish. But now, as she headed home, a renewed sense of hope filled her chest. She had found someone who saw her, who believed in her, and who was willing to help her. The world may have turned its back on her before, but now Emma knew that with one act of kindness, everything could change. When she got home, Emma found her mother sitting at the kitchen table, her face drawn with worry. But as Emma told her about the man who had bought her drawings and promised to help, Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. "Emma," she whispered, "this could be the chance we've been waiting for." The world had changed, and Emma knew that no matter what happened next, she had made a difference. She had opened a door, and through that door, she had found hope. Hope that would carry her and her mother through the darkest days ahead.